Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming to this meetup, this virtual meetup. I used to run some meetup or a meetup group before COVID. This is sort of my first time rebooting it post COVID in the midst of this wonderful AI evolution that we're going through right now. So I thought I would go ahead, since I find myself so interested in it, that I would start this meetup where we can all collaborate. I call it Vibe Code Circle because it's a collaboration group. We can all learn together. I can share, the practices that I've learned and the tools. And I've been in IT for a long time, essentially my whole adult career, many years. And I'm also going to be, providing resources and sharing, tools that we can use to try to learn and perfect our craft. And if you're here and you're like, but I'm not a software engineer, maybe you are a software engineer. But the thing that's awesome about, AI and prompt engineering is it's not just for writing software. It's for writing content. It's for improving content. It's for collaboration. There's just so many uses for it. So thanks for coming along with me on this journey. And so you literally can use it for almost everything. This presentation I'm going to use today was literally vibe coded. This is, I used a HTML format to format the presentation. And today we're going to be talking about modern website builders. I'll go over a handful of them. I'm going to be talking mostly the ones that do let you toggle between, messing with visual elements in a GUI screen, a WYSIWYG screen, and also looking at the code and modifying the code in the background, because those are the most powerful. They let you do everything from web pages all the way up to applications and everything along the spectrum in between, and integrating with other things. So first, I'm going to do a high-level overview of AI builders. Today, like I said, I'm covering the virtual ones, the ones that are online, and then in a future one, I'll cover tools that you use on your desktop for writing code using AI. I'll talk about some of the core principles that I use and a lot of people use for prompting, and the language of web applications. If you're building a website, what is the language that you use? Like any other specialty, there is specific language to describe different parts of a website. And I'll talk about prompting terms you can use that are very powerful, that make sure that what you have in your head, the idea that you have, is what winds up in the final product, or you can work your way towards that by using some of these powerful words. And I'm going to set up, a website for us. You'll see the demo here today was me vibe coding for some ideas for standing up a website, an online forum where we can share things if we need to share files, or if we want to share news and things like that. So, all right. Next, so who am I? My name is Trevor Lowing. I'm a software engineer, but right now I'm mostly working in like the cyber realm. But I'm very passionate about connecting people with technology, like coding. I've done since high school, and I lucked out, and for a large part of my career, I've gotten to do it. It's the closest thing I think to wizardry there is. You can take something in your head and create something in the real world that other people can use. That's really for me, I'm not an artist, but that's the closest to art I'll ever get. And like I said, we're going to stand up an online community at vibecodecircle.com. That's underway. You'll see some the core kernel parts of that today as we're doing that. And we can all support each other in this great community. Okay, so as I mentioned, I'm going to draw a distinction here between online builders, is essentially builders that run inside of a web browser, and then local integrated development environments. And there's pros and cons of each. The pros, some of the big pros with online builders are when you pretty much go into it, it's ready to go. You don't have to update dependencies. You don't have to configure much of anything. It's pretty much ready to go to start building off the scratch. If you want to do something like a deployment or collaborate with people, it's designed to do that. It's on the web. so you can share the activity with other people if you want to do group design. They're also great for rapid prototyping. If you need to get from zero to an idea or something to present to a customer, or just to have something tangible to look at as you're moving down the path towards what you finally want to accomplish. It's really great for that kind of prototyping. Limitations, you're sort of stuck with whatever the company puts into the platform. Sometimes they try to lock you into the platform. Luckily, so far, it's not horrible. Most of them do kind of let you move your code out into other places or push it into places like GitHub, where you can sync it with other locations. And it could be slower for complex tasks. If you have a lot of files and in a project online, you're probably not going to see it work as well as on the local file system. And then IDEs, most of the most popular AI coding integrated development environments are forks of Microsoft Visual Studio Code. And so in a future one, I'll show you, a handful of those. They look similar, but some of them are better at other things than others. And if you're going to write like a heavy app, or if you're going to write like a heavy web app, it might be a better approach, at least at some point. You might start off on the web, then move the code down on your desktop and start working on the heavier parts of the application. And it usually requires a lot more setup. Like you've got a lot of configurations, if you're using, MCP, there's just a lot of things that you got to monkey with to really set up an environment to be productive. Okay, so this is a list of the popular website builders out there. You got Lovable, which is really popular, it's been in the news this week. You got Bolt.new, has been around in a while. I think that's probably one of the early ones to really, along with versatility v0, to get early notoriety, kind of coming from nowhere, especially Bolt, and overnight becoming a really popular platform for doing development. Replete, unfortunately, had some bad news over the weekend. Apparently, they accidentally deleted somebody's production code, or the AI did. And that's like a lesson that everybody has to learn, is back up, back up, back up. Always make copies of everything you do. I am ultra paranoid. Whatever tool you use, you're usually going to want to connect it to GitHub so that you can synchronize and have versioned copies of your project, and you can restore it if you need to. It's just like it's a painful lesson the first time you have to learn it. It's sad that somebody had to. Base 44, I haven't really monkeyed around with too much. I think I did 4 or 5 of these today that I'm going to show you. And then there's this one called EasySite, or EasySite.ai. It's my personal favorite right now. It is a tiny company. They are kind of really punching above their weight quite a bit. Sort of the dirty truth is, for all of these tools, they don't usually make the large language models that are doing the grunt work in the background. They're sort of like a tooling overlay on top of that, and then they fine-tune aspects of it, and maybe they do create some small language models that help them stand out from their competitors. But I really like EasySite. The other thing that's nice about EasySite, I'll share later, is they've got right now like a lifetime deal. Most of these tools, you can, or some of them, you can have the option of using the tool and paying just a monthly subscription or an annual subscription, and they give you a certain amount of AI tokens to use to do your work. When you run out, you run out. But some of them allow what's called bring your own key. So you can go out to Anthropic or OpenRouter, and you can configure the system to use those when your credits run out, so you can keep doing work. And all right, so anyhow, if you're not familiar with software development, the life cycle of an application or a website has a lot of moving parts. So when you see the HTML on the front end, that's part of it. The more features that you add to a website, especially if there's a back end to go with that front end, for like customer relation management, where you're collecting emails and sending out newsletters. Maybe you actually have some sort of an application running there. The more complex it is, the more you have to learn about the ecosystem of lifecycle management. So we talked about the browser-based IDE. I briefly talked about GitHub integration, which is a version control system, an online version control system owned and run by Microsoft. It's really great, free to use. They do have enterprise plans where you can have more advanced features, but for the rest of us, it's pretty much free. You have automated builds, like folks. There's if you're familiar with Cloudflare, Cloudflare is really great about having automated pipelines for deploying your software. For the stuff we're doing today, that's really not going to come into play. That's really for something probably more advanced than that. Or if you do wind up, say, developing it on one platform, pushing it to GitHub, and then having it automatically deploy when you're ready to your production environment elsewhere on the web. So you might host it one place and do the development work in a different place. And as I mentioned earlier, real-time collaboration. If you want to be able to do something, you have multiple, say you work at a small organization and you have non-technical folks that are providing feedback on whether the site looks and behaves like they want it to. And then, whoever's the AI coder is the one actually entering the prompts. You can do that. A lot of them have collaborations or team type features to them, especially as they advance. Then they have monitoring and logs. Once you've deployed your software, you need to make sure it's running right. If you work within a compliance regime, you might have a requirement to log certain actions that happen. And for security, if you need to be able to, something goes wrong, either for performance or security, and you need to be able to review logs and find out what happened so you can fix it. A lot of systems will have that feature, or you can connect to it. Next week, I'm doing a meetup on Supabase, which I'll describe it more then, but it's sort of a platform that for sort of back-end type activities, and that would have a lot more like logging type activities if you're in a database and some of the other features that they have there. And then you have like source export and forking. Forking is more advanced if you want to transfer projects between users and platforms. And I lay out some of the benefits here. You want browser-based ID, maximum accessibility, teamwork. Online things are just really great ways, and it sort of reduces your risk. If the thing you're trying to do is create a website or a web application, every minute you don't spend dorking around, with the tooling to get the work done is a minute saved. And, eventually maybe you get more advanced, you get more resources, you can have dedicated people and dedicated roles to handle some of these more advanced things, but it's something to be aware of depending on where you are on that spectrum. Hey, Clifton C, WordPress and AI. Hey, all right, now that I know there's somebody else that's cool with WordPress and AI, we're going to be doing one on that because I'm a big old WordPress nerd. So building a website versus building a web application, it's a spectrum. So like a static web page that literally does nothing but present content is definitely what I would call a website. But, say you add a login, say you add the ability for somebody to, sign up for a newsletter. The more, I think, features like that you add, eventually it becomes more like a web application. Some of the more advanced web applications are like Microsoft Office. A lot of people use that. This week, there's an IPO for one called Figma. Adobe's another one. They have a lot of online applications, and they're far more advanced. So you probably want to look at the right tool for the right job at some point. So if you're starting with a minimum viable product for a web application or a website, online, definitely the way to start. Yeah, where you have something workable and ready to go in a short period of time to show your stakeholders or prove out your idea. And then as it gets more complicated, maybe you move it more into the web application paradigm. All right, so what are some popular use cases for website builders? So you want to put on your personal portfolio. I did this the other day. I took my resume and I threw it into the AI and just told it, make me a website, out of my resume. And it was pretty slick. I didn't spend a lot of time on it. Just one of those things. Like a long time ago, I got my domain name as my name, and I hadn't done anything with it. And in a matter of minutes, it let me put my resume up there, for better or worse. It could be a business site if you want to have an online presence for your business. That's huge nowadays to draw customers. People don't look at the yellow pages anymore. They're going to get out there and they're going to Google. They'll pull up a Google search, and if yours is the one in the top few that pop up, your chances of getting that business are a lot higher. Might have an online store to sell something, equivalent like your Etsy's and stuff like that. You might have a nonprofit page if you run a nonprofit or a church or something like that. It might be an event page if you want to manage like registrations. Might be a blog or a magazine. That's a really popular one. WordPress is like 43% of the web. It's massive. All kinds of people doing that. As I mentioned, a landing page just to have a presence for marketing or to generate leads. You might have a SaaS application to offer, the software as a service. Might be a community forum. I'm working on standing up one of those for us in WordPress that we can, share, like I said, share files, do more advanced things that we can't just do in an online meeting. Could have a course hub. You have a learning management systems. There's just a ton of really great learning management systems out there where, again, you just focus on the content for the learning, the videos and the training materials and, the slides. And these learning management systems provide all the surrounding stuff so that you can host your classes. You can charge a fee if you need to charge a fee. And then you got an internal dashboard. You might have a back-end administrative interface. You might have information that you're collecting, say on a search engine. Is the recording going to be on YouTube? Yes, it will. Well, as long as I don't mess it up. I'm using Restream, and I tested it. I should be able to put it up afterwards. I'll chop off the part up in front where I messed up the audio for a minute. And then you might have a booking site. That's another popular thing. If you have any place that does reservations, any place where you rent bookings, great for that. All right, so now we're going to get into the prompting part of this. So I'm going to bore you up front with some slides. We'll get to the eye candy in a minute, and we'll start to play with some things online. But I just want to sort of set some basic, ground truths to sort of understand, like, what are we doing and why are we doing it, and what's a good approach to do it so that you can, complete your work quickly and have good results. So, the first principle I always think about is alignment, right? So any good design is going to start out with a really clear purpose. What it is you want to do, who's your customer, and then everything flows from that. If you want to start a hair care business and your whole thing is just about drawing in new customers, you can completely tailor a site using one of these tools to doing that. And once you understand the language of what the components of a website do to get to your goal, you'll better understand how to tell the LLM or to prompt the LLM to produce an output to do the same. And then strategic alignment, so there's going to be all the components riding on a page, and we get some understanding around what's their purpose and what's the business objectives behind them. Obviously, if you surf the web, you realize there's a lot of sort of patterns, the patterns to how people build web pages. Some are the more successful one. It's almost Darwinian. The more successful ones wind up being, repeated and best practices, and the language models when they're built, they see those patterns. And then, so when you ask for something with the intended purpose, it produces you something based on what it learned. All right, so what's effective AI prompting? I sort of look at it as like you have great flexibility. You can provide it a little bit of information about what you want and leave it very broad, and the AI has a good chance of getting you something very workable. But the more context that you can provide, the more information telling you what you want, why you want it, what's the goal, the more likely you are to really have something that performs well doing what you want it to do. So, like here, so you specify the intent. So what's the goal of the page? Who's the audience? Who's for? Who are you trying to get to interact with the page? If you want to, and if there's specific components that you want on your page, tell it. Like if you want a newsletter sign up, you tell it with your prompt and it'll add it. You can specify a visual style. What should should it look or feel like? And I'll go over some keywords, just a few keywords that you'll start to understand what I mean when I say that. And then interaction. So how should it work? You can literally tell it, I want it to click on A and I want B action to happen, and it'll do it. Okay, so we're going to talk about components here. So this is the language of how web pages are built. And so, as I mentioned, you have the strategy. You want to match the user intent. You want to prioritize key actions. So you position the critical components in high visibility areas. Whenever you look at a web page, when you're doing this sort of design, what catches your eye? When you want to see good pages, see what catches your eye. Is it the site too busy? Is it not busy enough? What visual elements do your eyes fall on? What does it make you think? All those things are very intentional, especially for well-designed pages. Everything's there for a purpose, and so you really want to maximize that, to produce the best outcome. And you want to maintain a visual hierarchy. You sort of guide them through the content with sizing and placement. It's almost like an art thing, but you'll see as I show you the patterns in a minute, you'll begin to see what I'm talking about. So you want certain visual elements to stay the same across page to page. What you don't want to do, if you really want a page that drives business, you don't want to confuse your customers. You don't want them to have to hunt around. I mean, we've all done it. We've been on a website and you're like, I know there's a login button here somewhere. I just can't remember where it is. And it's a really bad problem. Like, there's a lot of websites I go to and I'm like, I got to look at the search history and try to figure out, was it app.domainname.com or domainname.com/app or domainname.com/login, because I can't see a visual element that tells me where to log in. You shouldn't design your page that way. You want a consistent experience. You want to, meet expectations to a degree, to try to make that easier for the user to interact and have a pleasant experience. You don't want to be overly dense with the content, but sometimes you do. I mean, it really depends on what the intent of the page is. Some types of pages, maybe you do, maybe you want, like, say it's a developer resource. Oh, what is vibe coding? Well, that's interesting. That is a pretty nebulous thing. What is vibe coding? I would say it's using large language models to develop code for folks that aren't necessarily software engineers and are more spending time about what they want than focused on writing the code to get it. I'll do a slide on my next one. If you're confused about vibe coding, it's very much a nebulous thing. It's sort of in the mind's eye of how you want to do it. For me, vibe coding is art. When I was a kid, I could never draw a straight line to save my life. Whenever we had to draw in class, I had to do those letter things over and over again. I was like in 6th grade going A, because my handwriting was so bad. When I got into art class, I could appreciate art, but when I made it wasn't that great. Vibe coding, I think, like, lets you go from idea to the desired outcome without have to deal with the code underneath. If you do know more about the code, it is definitely beneficial. If you understand how things work within web application, it is really beneficial, because what you don't want is put something out there that breaks, and you'll find out once you start vibe coding that sometimes something will break and the language model cannot solve the problem. And eventually we'll talk about that too. How do you trouble? I'll do a session on troubleshooting while vibe coding and some things that I've learned that can help you when you get stuck. So one thing I should mention, that, like, when it comes to vibe coding, what I found personally and what I've witnessed in others is that the big problems with it are inertia. Everything you're used to doing in life requires a lot of upfront work to get the result. And so you're sort of programmed that way. So when you go to approach it and you're like, oh, I don't know how to get started. This is one of the technologies that's ever come along that lets you just try. And the cost of trying is very little, so the cost of learning is very little. One problem you'll run into is a lot of times they will set up quotas and things called like tokens or credits, and it's an arbitrary unit. So my recommendation is when you're on the front end of the learning curve, is you try to find the platforms that either have unlimited or really high limits, or you do multiple platforms, so that you can bounce across them while you're learning and not have to worry about racking up a big bill. But it's the first technology that in my life that's come along that way, where you can really produce quality results without having to invest a ton. But we're internally wired to worry about the cost. We're internally worried that what if I make something that's broken? Well, so you can fix it, or you can start over and try again, write a better prompt. Component library. All right. So I'm going to talk over some of these and have little like drawings you can see. So you got foundational ones that we'll talk about. You got components for doing content. You got interactive ones, display, e-commerce, mobile, and advanced. So these are sort of the building blocks you might imagine for a page. And you've seen them, like every page has them, especially these foundation ones. You got, header, and the header usually has navigation. A lot of times they just call the header navigation. There is a type of HTML called semantic HTML, which I highly recommend using. I recommend you ask the AI to output it as well. But semantic HTML is nice because you will literally call a header a header. You literally call a nav a nav or whatever. It's a lot more human readable, and I think in the long term more maintainable. You have a hero section. That's usually a section that's supposed to sort of draw your attention. A lot of times the very first thing after the nav bar or the very first thing on a page will be a hero section with some kind of call to action to grab your attention. Why are you on that website? And you'll see, even though I didn't ask for it, almost all of the language models that I did with my test prompt, did that. You got footer, which usually tends to be like links, social media links, legal things, your privacy notice, your terms of use and all that. They'll usually wind up in the footer. You got sidebars, a lot of times wind up being used for another form of navigation, usually within you're already in the site. And you all have seen this. Every website sort of behaves this way. And you got components for content. So you're providing content on the web page. Might be a block of text, might be an image or an image gallery, might be an embedded video player. You might have a blog post that has a bunch of snippets of the blogs, and you click on it and it does the full-blown blog article. And you got interactive ones. You might have a contact form. It's a popular thing to have on a website. That's a good way to have customer relations, is having that contact on there, asking them, you want to get a hold of us for whatever reason, enter here, and you can manage it. And eventually we'll talk about what you can do with that kind of information to boost your sales and improve your engagement with your customers. And you have buttons or call to action things, click here, buy now. You've seen them on the website. It's usually the thing with the most attention grabbing when you hit a website. You get a search bar, helps you navigate and search the website. You might have links for social media, but you might also have feeds that show your social media. Content for displaying things. A sort of way to more organize content. So you might have cards, or little self-contained chunks of text. You might have tables that can contain tabular data. Sometimes they're interactive. You can sort and filter and stuff on them. You have charts and graphs that are, like they say, a picture's worth 1,000 words. A good chart or a good graph can convey far more information than text in the same amount of area. And then you got testimonials. That's a big one. Social proof. We're humans. We're designed. We grow up interacting with other humans. Those testimonials, if they're well done, can be powerful. Sometimes they're complete BS, and you'll see that as you generate these websites. A lot of times it'll automatically throw in placeholders, and you can prompt so that it doesn't do that. But it might know you have a testimonial section, so instead of doing that ipsum lorem, it'll do like Johnny Smith from Ohio, says this is the best product ever, and you're like, what? Where'd you get this? I don't know anybody by that name. Um, Anyhow, then you got e-commerce. That's another big subset of the web. You might have a product catalog, you might have a shopping cart, you might have a checkout form, and a payment gateway. Those are all big components. These, as you see as we're going along, some of these components also become integrations. So a lot of times, if you're building a website, doing your own code for a catalog or a shopping cart or a form or a payment gateway, these sort of things are more complex. This might be where you start using an integration or using a third party application to hand it off to it to complete the sale. There's just a lot of regulation and complexity around those things, and you don't want to lose a sale, and you don't want to have somebody wind up being defrauded because the security issue. You got mobile ones. There's a lot of people that design for mobile first. There's a large percent of web content that's consumed on a mobile device, so it's not a bad idea to design that. You have mobile menus, sometimes called hamburgers. If you go from a website down to to a mobile app, the first thing it'll do is it'll collapse the nav bar with all the buttons down into a hamburger menu, and a nav that pops out. You might have like touch areas, and you might have like the navigation moves to the bottom of the screen to be closer to the thumb, for when you're using a mobile device. And a big thing is this whole idea of being responsive. It scales and rearranges the page to be the most functional for the size and the dimensions of the screen. Then we got more advanced components. You might have embedded code like HTML, CSS, or JavaScript. You might have, as I mentioned, API integrations, application programming interfaces. That's where you're using something somebody else wrote, and pulling a resource, pulling a query, storing information, you name it. You have database connections, and the more you move towards a web application from a website, the more you're going to be looking at some kind of a database. And you have analytics. You're going to want to know how your site's performing. You're going to want to know how your sales are performing. So you might have features for doing that. And the AI understands those. Again, sometimes it makes sense to write it your own. Sometimes it makes sense to pull something off the shelf. So you got something that works. If it's your business, your livelihood, sometimes you are better off using something third party or pulling it into your application. All right. So then you're taking, those are the pieces, and now we're taking these pieces and we're going to like build a page with an intent, a page with a purpose. And how do you prompt to get that? So say you got a business homepage. Look on the right here, you'll see at the top it has your header with your navigation, your logo, and some kind of call to action like sign in, sign up, buy now, whatever. And then you'll usually have that call to action, that hero at the top that has a compelling headline. You want to grab them in the first few seconds to keep reading that page. And then maybe you start talking about some of the features, or what are your best products or best features of your product. And then you do something like the company is great, some social proof, something that says other customers have used that product. It's a good product, and they're willing to test it. Trevor, is this something we can do while you are speaking? Well, yes, we will in a minute. If for the impatient, let's see here. Doop, 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 doop. Hold on. Wrong page. Oh, it's going to refresh on me. There we go. There we go. If you have access to an AI code builder, this one has a free. I'm going to let me do it a little. I'll put some of these links in here. Pick one of your choice, and I'll paste the prompt and play with it yourself. Here's level. Oh, what is it? Something popped up and made it so I can't. There we go. There we go. This is global.dev. and then we'll do bolt.new. Most of these pretty much all of these, especially if you have. I'm gonna take one on. I think that was a bad idea to try to pop all those pages. I'll just read off the URLs there. All right, vibe coding. We're over embraces the vibe and trust the AI to handle. That's not bad. Can somebody type and say if they can still hear me? Because my computer sort of locked up right there when I started browsing these other websites. Is he frozen or just me? All right. All right. Can you guys hear me? Let's see here. How can I reset this live? Tell me when you can. Tell me. Can you guys hear me? Can you guys hear me? Oh, you can? All right, great. Awesome. All right. I'm not going to make that mistake again. So I tried popping like browsing a bunch of heavy websites all at once, and I think I overloaded it. So go to bolt.new or lovable.dev or easysite.ai and just have the page open. You can start playing with it if you want, like log in, and it'll bring you to a prompt that looks like where is it? It'll look like, which one's safe? Oh, there we go. Kind of like it'll have like a text box in the bottom. Just get to that point, and we'll all try a prompt in a minute. All right. So I'm almost to the point where we're going to start playing anyhow. All right. If we can still hear me, I'm going to start talking. So like type to make sure you can still hear me. Sort of paranoid now. All right. So you got an e-commerce page. It's got a layout. You're used to these. You see these pages all the time. It'll have a main image. It'll have a main product. Have thumbnails and reviews. It'll have a detailed product description. So a page like this is designed to convert visitors. People are just viewing the page. Choose the Ethernet cord rather than the Wi-Fi for better connection. Oh yeah, I will next time. Yeah. Well, thanks. Yeah, I'll try that next time. And we'll talk about some of the keywords in a minute. But like some of the words you can use in your prompt that are very powerful to produce an output to make the page more effective are things like a sales focused website, or the one I use all the time is high converting. You might not be familiar with what high converting is, but the AI does. And what that means is it's been tuned. It has the features on the page to try to turn a browser into a customer, or at least to collect their customer information. Persuasive is another word. Blog magazine, again, same thing. You've seen a layout like this. Most blogs look very similar to this. The keywords you might use for that might be user engaging or shareable or SEO optimized. Search engine optimization is kind of going through a big flux right now because of AI and web searching, but it's still very effective. How do you make sure your website winds up being most searched, and understanding how the search engine is ranking your site, taking your site and doing with it that it winds up higher in the rank. And there's tools you can use for that. And you got a SaaS app you're used to that. If you use an online app, again, you might use high converting. You might say sales focused. You might say trust building. These are things, the first impression that you want to get across. You want to build trust. You want to have the website focused on sales. You want it to be highly converting. And it could be an educational one. You might be user engaging or interactive. And again, these patterns here are you've seen all over the web, and especially with the most successful learning management systems. Community forum, same thing. You want something that's community building, interactive, you can reuse it. So here's where I'm going to talk about this. So high impact intent words. So you got, like I said, conversion, trust, visibility, engagement. So high converting, lead generating, sales focus, call to action optimized. Those are all in that direction. They want to convert you. They want to perform well to turn visitors into customers. Trust building, credibility building, secure, transparent. Whatever you think is the most effective thing for your target customer is what you're going to want to tune the page to and tune the prompt to build the page to. Visibility, SEO optimized, shareable, link worthy, high traffic. Do they bookmark your page? Do they share a link to your page because they saw something interesting? And those things you can measure even when you build the page. User engaging, interactive, retention focused, delightful. All right, so I'm just going to cover these. These are high level things. I'm not going to get into a lot of detail, so we can start getting into the eye candy. But other aspects you're going to work with is look at fonts for performance, fonts to produce the look and feel that you want. It is an art to on itself. You can search for all kinds of guidance. You want it to be a compatible font. You want it to help convey the message. Cascading style sheets. There are a lot of frameworks in use there. Some platforms default to a framework. Some of them allow you to change to a different framework. In my case, a lot of times I'll use the AI builder to build a page and then convert it into something I can use on WordPress. So then I usually do that by having it produce vanilla CSS. So not using a framework. What's some things? Oh yeah, that's a good idea. What's some things? Oh, that I have coded, or that everyone's coded. Mostly web pages, a few web applications like educational stuff. I'll share it down the road. I'll show you the page that I'm literally building right now for this group for the landing page. Larger applications, I think the tools are difficult, at least the ones I have access to produce really complex things. Once you get too big of a code base, most of the consumer level tools start having issues. And I'm on my learning curve too as well. We'll talk about it later, but it's really easy to get over greedy when you start vibe coding. You ask for something, it produces or overproduces, and you're like, well, that was cool. I wonder how much I could ask for. And suddenly you've got a messed up code, and you got to learn, how to manage that, how to control that. Some of the tools are learning to help you do that too. They'll create more frequent stop points and ask you, is this what you really want along the way? JavaScript, same thing. You got vanilla JavaScript or frameworks. Then you got integrations. Like I said, at some point, some parts of their website you might want to use a third-party service on, or pull something, an open source project out there to use rather than write it all from scratch. All right, so into the demo time. The tool that I'm going to use is EasySite. It's my personal favorite because I can just bring my own key, and it has a lot of features that other tools don't have that I think will work well, long-term managing a website. It's not perfect. None of them are perfect. They all have their issues. They all are very dependent on your web connection. They're all very dependent on the language models that they connect to. Almost all of them use Anthropic. And Anthropic goes down, the tool goes down. All right. So, sort of what's the cycle of prompting? And so I would say you develop your prompt, and then the AI is going to analyze that prompt, and then it's going to crank it out, give you a preview, and then you're going to sit back and try to tweak it in the process. Oh, that's nice. Oh, you mean during the session here you're building a lovable app, or you're in general, you have a big project you're working on? I think I misread that. I said, okay, big project. Lovable is pretty awesome. Yeah, a lot of people are really doing good work with writing applications in Lovable. It's interesting what it did in this one. You'll see this. I'll show you the demo in a second. So then deployment, and you push it out and they have a live URL. And usually you can sort of do that sort of versioning where you tell it when you want it to replace whatever is the production version. So the prompt that I use, and I did not spend a lot of time writing this prompt. This was just off the cuff. I did use like a little tool that I'll show you guys that I'm working on. Like I built while I was doing this because I was like, how do I take the way I prompt in my head, and I'll turn it into a forum, so it'll kind of give you guys, if you don't have experience, maybe a tool you can use to prompt from. So it cranked out. I did that, a crude version, and I said, I want a landing page for my Vibe Code Circle community group that should be engaging and inviting. My audience is anyone interested in vibe coding, from building web pages, websites, and web applications, and even content development, and integrating vibe coding into their business processes, and focus on making the page high converting, trust building, secure and transparent, and SEO optimized and shareable and link worthy, and communication building. And design should be inspired by Lego color schemes. So I was like, I always try to throw something in there to try to like, how am I going to give it a flair? And I thought, if I'm looking at a community site, those bright Lego colors, to me that would attract me. If I land on a site and it's all dull grays and dark blues or whatever, it might be a turn off. But light colors with light bright colors might be something to draw you in a little better. But I added this extra thing here, and I always add that on especially with a new project. I said, finally, document everything in a project requirements document using Markdown format. What does that mean? So when you enter this prompt, the language model is sort of going to do planning on what it's going to do. It's going to develop a plan. And it's going to keep that plan in its head. It's going to produce your output. And during your session, it might remember the plan. But if you go back another time, or you start a new like thread to work on a project, it might not remember the plan. And so if you want to maintain that plan, a project requirements document is one great way to do it. So, and telling it up front to just draft it right off the bat will save you a lot of time. So you don't have to write it yourself. You don't have to do it in arrears. It'll just crank it out the first time it runs. All right, so this prompt, we entered in Easy Site. And just to show you an idea of what the website looked like, in the prompt, you can see on the left, this was the prompt. And the AI generated this output as it was going along. And when it completed, it gave me this message here. It shows, key features implemented, Lego-inspired design, high-converting elements, community-focused, trust building, mobilely responsive, SEO optimized, and comprehensive project requirements document. And it laid out the page sections here: header, hero, about, features, community, testimonials, final call to action, and then footer. And then it asked me if I want to enable the database. I'm not going to do that at the time. And then it generated the PRD, project requirements document. I'll show it to you in a second. I'll go to code. Let me show you the page first. So here's the page. Nav, header. You got call to action button, hero. You can see all I did a really cool animated terminal thing here, I guess because they assume all coders are working in terminals. And really colorful. It matched the theme that we wanted. And you can see it's nice all the way down. It's really colorful, perky. You can see a lot of gradients. Anthropic has a tendency to add gradients to most of the stuff it generates. It's almost an anti-pattern. At some point, we'll probably want to prompt against it up front. That way we don't get too much of it, or tell it not to get too excessive with the gradients. Yeah, it's got a nice footer, testimonials. Someone made up these testimonials as his placeholders, like I mentioned. And then you got a nice colorful footer with a way that people can sign up. So there we go. So that took a matter of minutes. If you look to the user interface here, so it made the prompt on the left, after it generated it. It's kind of this that shows a preview of what the final site is going to look like. Now it has this button up here called code, and most of them have this view. So it shows you the directory of code that it just generated. All this was just generated. You have public, favicon, placeholder SVG, robots.txt rules, your source code. It generates by default a React application. And then you got your JSON and other things that are part of the stock project type. And you'll see this down here, this special file here. This is the PRD we talked about. So this is written in Markdown, which is both human and machine readable. It's once you start using it more and more, your brain will sort of read it like you do a Word document, because we get so used to reading these, and you'll see that, well, this is normally like an H2, and this is normally like an H3, and this is a paragraph, and it lays it out. So if we ever do any future work on this project, it's going to remember it: component and structure, tech stack, feature specifications, and lays out all of the detail, all the things that it generated. It explained the why, what it did, and there we go. So we got a requirements document that in the future will track what we need. So if we make another update, again, we want to update the project requirements document. So most of these, I'll go ahead and walk you through the interface a little bit here. You got this one will actually let you generate Android apps. It has project admin settings that are sort of meta and above the site level. Like changing the DNS settings so that you can host it, at your domain name. You can connect to a database. This one has two options. They have a built-in database. And they let you connect to Supabase. I'll go ahead and pop open the settings here. And so you have all these settings related to this project. Custom domains. You can enable a chat bot. You can enable a webhook. You can adjust the SEO settings to improve your website's performance indexing on search engines. You can set up your email, do database work. You can set up a Stripe if you've enabled any kind of a payment gateway or a cart or something like that for selling stuff. It's got other third-party integrations where you can set up different types of logins, Google, Facebook. And there's with it can connect to GitHub to be able to store and synchronize and version your source code. And then as MPC tools, those are model context protocol. If you're not familiar with it, if you're familiar with APIs, think of it as like APIs, but much easier to use. They let the AI agents use tools. So by themselves, they have no arms and legs. They sort of don't have the ability to do a whole lot outside of just talking with you or generating code. And the more tools you add to it, you can add other capabilities like searching the web. And it's just endless, really. Modifying a database, there's MCP tools being written for just about everything. And when we go back to preview, you can also upload images and whatnot to add your unique. I won't get that into it here. I'll probably do a few demo in the future. So here's what it looks like, without the interface around it. Again, very nice, high quality. A few years ago, if you had to pay a developer to do this, it cost you a lot of money. This is very high quality looking. And these are some of the other ones. I don't know which one. This might be Lovable. Oh, this isn't Lovable. This might be Bolt.new. Yeah, this is Bolt.new. Again, it did a very good job. I like aspects of this better. This is really interesting, visually interesting. Like the circle buttons is a nice touch. It has the call to actions. It has, just a little bit cleaner, I would say, layout. Not as bright, and but still really well done. Looks professional. I love the footer here. Vibrant colors with gradients in the form, and then the footer. I really like that. So this one's interesting. This one is Lovable, and it does occasionally. Lovable has this thing where it takes you too literally. Like, so I want it to be inspired by Lego. I didn't want it to actually do Lego, and it did Lego, but other than that, it did a good job. I mean, you're probably going to replace the stock images anyhow. Again, you have your gradients, because it's using Anthropic. It's pretty clean, a little plain. It might require more direction to produce a better result than this, which is, once you get used to using a tool and you find its little quirks, you get used to that and you prompt for it. This is Vercel V0. This is another one. It's very nice, simple. Again, there's a gradients, header, call action, join now. You'll see very similar outputs. I kind of like the way it did the form in this one better. It stands out. I really, again, like the hero near the bottom here, the final call to action, and then the footer. Yeah. So let me go back to the presentation. So that was the default, one that I did here. Let's go next. All right. Oops. No, that's not what I wanted to do. All right. So let me pull something open real quick. Oops, I forgot to. Let me go to my projects here. That's nice. And then I will pop open the prompting. Here we go. So writing prompts, the first go around. Actually, that's the wrong version. Give me one more second. Meet up. There we go. There's the final version. There we go. All right. So um, when you're first filling the prompt, figuring out like all the little aspects of a prompt that I mentioned to you. Trying to remember all that could be a bit cumbersome. So while I was doing this, I went ahead and wrote a couple of like form versions that we can use to sort of build it visually instead of having to remember all those keywords that I talked about. And I'll keep maybe tweaking this because it's a good job aid, a good little wizard to generate your prompts. I had hold on, let me my notes. All right, so I had do. So I was doing a prompt, and I thought, well, what kind of live demo can I do here? And I did this one here. All right, so I'm going to ask it. I'm going to say I want a website for a business that specializes spelling it and walking walking or taking. Sorry, taking. My typos. Taking other people's kids to the movies. It's like a babysitting, but the parents drop off the kids. Um, kids. Man, gotta fix my type errors. At a specific location near the theater, and it'll fix your spelling errors. And afterwards, tell the parents where to pick the kids up. It has subscriptions and bundle plans. And here's the high impact words I talked about. I'll choose some of them. So I'm gonna want persuasive, maybe high converting, definitely trust building. It's got to look professional. You're definitely going to want it to look secure. You're going to SEO optimize. That's probably enough. I'm not going to let it. I'm not going to choose individual sections. I'll let it do that. And default visual style. I don't really care for the layout pattern, but let's go with creative. I'll say inspired by. How about Disney and the Stitch cartoon character. You know. All right, so I'm not going to mention any constraints, and you see while I was typing, I went ahead and generated the prompt. It added the project requirements markdown thing at the end of the prompt. I'm going to go ahead for this one. I'm going to go to Gemini. New chat. Open the canvas, and let's hit enter and see what happens. And it takes a minute to generate. All these sort of do the same thing. I can show thinking here so you can see what it's doing. So in this case, the show thinking is sort of what's going on in the background, like sort of an internal dialogue, if you could like sort of read its mind. So it's analyzing the concept, refining the approach, formulating a project requirements document, refining the concept, outlining the scope, finalizing the strategy, formulating a plan, refining a PRD, defining the blueprint. Bam! Now it's generating code. And some of those will show you the code being generated in real time, which is kind of neat. It's not of value really, but it is kind of neat to watch. It's sort of amazing how quickly it writes the code. Easy Site does a great job of that. Like you can just see it cranking out the code really really quickly. This is Gemini 2.5 Pro, which is released relatively recently. Other like like regular site editors or site builders. This one doesn't necessarily uh, fully expect that you're going to deploy it from this environment. You can preview it. I don't see in it where you can actually host it, so to speak. The nicer ones will let you, give you the option to host it, which is nice, unless you have a separate hosting environment from your development environment. A lot of it will come down to like maybe hosting features and hosting performance, things like that. And it's going and it's going. Huh, that's interesting. Wonder what it seems like it may be. There we go. Hmm. My mouse just died. Okay, now I gotta find. Yes. What's it doing? Did it generate the project? All right, here we go. It's done, so I'm going to go ahead and hit open. So it'll open the site. Let's see what it did. All right, all right. It's okay. It's not exactly what I was hoping for. Your date night is back. The movie adventure awaits. Secure drop off, movie time, parent updates, convenient pickup. Pricing doesn't look too far off. 45 bucks per child is a little cheap in the DC metro area where we live. Guardian Pass came out with some interesting things, a little darker than I would have chosen. So that's pretty neat. I think I'm going to tweak it and try it on another site. So let me go back to let me adjust this a little bit. I'm going to, instead of the illustration, I'm going to switch it back to, see here, I want to say 1950s nostalgia. And a nostalgia. 1950s nostalgia. Drive-in movie theaters. What else? Yeah, that's probably good. So let's go ahead and take that. And this time I'm gonna do it in the easy site. Let's see what it does. And let's go create a new project for the new website. And most of them look like this. This is the default view. Where you've got like a prompt box. You might have options. They just recently updated this. You can actually choose between React and Vue, and they're going to be adding more options. And then you got tools. You can choose tools. You want to make sure looks like it can connect to Figma. You can manage the built-in database, or I'm just going to do search for images. That gives it good stock images. I'm going to paste in the prompt and generate my website. All right, so like I said, it's showing us the code being generated. Here it's thinking on the left. There's our prompt. Now it's thinking. It says processing your prompt, building in progress. Now it's cranking out the code. It's kind of slick. If you've ever written code, you see how fast this goes. It's really hard to think to go back to the days when you had to write it all by hand. Even if you're not vibe coding, at least writing sections of code like this is an option that's much better than writing code from scratch. So it's going and going and going. So it's interesting. So it's creating not found. It's adding nice features to the website that you would normally have to think about when you're designing a website. So if somebody tries navigating a page that doesn't exist or on your website, you're supposed to get a 404 not found page, and this is building it in. All those little things you would have to think about. It's going to do out of the box. and gives you a much better starting point than not having just having a sort of a blank canvas. And like I said, the big thing is you don't want to be worried about trial and error, or restarting over if the prompt didn't really give you what you wanted. Um, Now it looks like it's doing the config. So hopefully pretty soon, we're working hard. Sounds like it might be getting closer. It's there's almost no way to predict how long this takes. So while this is going on, you got to imagine. So this is like a front end orchestrator, that is going out, and it took our prompt and it is querying, back to the large language. It's going back to the Anthropic model, and it's querying. It's prompting it and getting the response, and just generating cyclically over and over and over. I would really, someday like to talk to them and get a better idea of like the moving parts behind this. I'm sure they've got to do things to tune that, so that the output isn't just out of the box. What's going to differentiate between, lovable, bolt not do, new easy sites, Vercel V0, all these companies. There's a lot of them out there. What's going to differentiate them is the ability to probably use multiple models, use small language models for specialized things to really tweak the output. And that'll probably be the big thing, and maybe add more features. I was watching or reading a forum earlier that sort of the inside support forum for this on Discord, and they're talking about like adding even more features. So right now, this will let you create a CRM. It'll let you send an email, and basic things like that. But they're talking about even more. And I think, like big picture wise, one of the fears I have when you're using a tool like this is maintainability. If you didn't write the code, you have to maintain the code. If it develops a vulnerability, and you need to fix it, maybe the language model can't fix it. Like who do you go to? And in my mind, having essentially stock implementations for some of the back end stuff like the CRM, maybe like blogging, the big features like that, having stock out of the box ones that are actually like version controlled, that it uses rather than generating the code from scratch, might be a better way to go. Let the language model do the eye candy, do the custom, bespoke things, but some blocks that are more important to a fully functioning website, the things that really earn you money, and that you need to be able to connect to other systems, all those features like that. Maybe you have stock codes, or maybe you use third-party services for that. So I might wind up paying. It's still going. There's just like I said, there's just no way of telling. You saw the first one, we did in Gemini. That was pretty fast, and I found that in general. I think Gemini doesn't necessarily um, concern itself with a lot of the back end stuff that this one's doing. So it's pretty quick. If you're doing demos and you're learning, Gemini's not a bad way to go. If you have last month, they had an offer for like 18 months for folks that that were in college, which is pretty nice. The subscription cost for some of these is not that bad, considering what you're going to learn using this. Uh, it is interesting too that like Gemini 2.5 Pro is really great inside of Gemini. When you try to use it in a third party tool like Cursor or Windsurf, I find the results aren't nearly as nice. All right, I'm just going to go ahead and do another. Well, since we're sitting here talking, I'm going to go ahead and do another one in Lovable. Uh, let's see here, Lovable. I don't know. Lovable. There was a thing in the news just today that talked about Lovable is the fastest growing startup. Mm. Oh, what is it? It thinks I'm. Uh, okay, I must think that because I tried accessing that site, make sure. So I don't know what the credit limit is. I did this a couple days ago. I might have used up my credits. Let's see what it says. Still loading. Still loading. Still loading. And we'll tune when it completes. All right, looks like all right. I'll start this one. It sounds like the other one just completed. You can adjust that sound too. That's the new one. I think I maybe will at some point. All right, so I didn't hit that one, and it's running. I'm going to go back and take a look at what Easy Site did. Oh wow, this is crazy. Wow. All right, that's a little over the top. Yeah, I think it took the kid thing, and I think it did like kids playgrounds and playing with chalk. It is really creative. I don't know if I'm really super happy with that hero section, but maybe we'll see. I'll show it what it looks like outside of the editor. So I like that font. Easy drop, movie magic, say fun, convenient pickup, why parents love us. These are all things that are like building your trust, making you feel safe. Choose your adventure, magic, and what's our VIP family. Safety first. These things are going to reinforce what parents would want to look for. CPR certified. There you go. Safety protocols, photo updates. It's really like things that would be tough on your own to try to think of. It would probably take years of being in business and answering parents' questions to come up with great looking landing page stuff like this. Our certifications and credentials, same thing, man. You would want to know that they're child care providers licensed by the state. CPS approved them, cinema safety certified, whatever. Um, Emergency contact, bam, like there you go. Like you're in a panic, you need to get a hold of them, and they've got an emergency contact right on the landing page. Here's your testimonials. There's your footer. I gotta say, I like it overall. I like the content. Probably the only thing I would maybe tweak on this, but let's go ahead and see what it looks like outside. See, maybe it's not so. Yeah, I would still say I would change that font, or maybe I would adjust the gradient so it's not so blurry. It's a little hard to read, so maybe 30, 40% less blurry. I would prompt that. Let's go and see if it looks like this one's generating. Well, that's generating. Let's see if we can adjust. Where's the Gemini? All right, so I didn't like how dark this one was. Let's tweak this one while we're waiting on the other one. So I'll say these colors are too dark and gloomy. Parents might be turned off. Let's see what it does. So you can use plain language, plain English language like that for doing these tweaks. You can be as specific as you want to, or something like this. This is probably what I would do because I'm like, I don't know what color to tell it. I might tell it to, replace the blues, but let's just see what it does with a general one like this. And while this one's updating, I'll bounce back to Easy Site again. And if I'm confusing you now, okay, I'm just trying to show you a bunch of different ways, and I don't want to have to wait 5 minutes in between. One of the cool features that I really like about Easy Site that a lot of them don't seem to have is restore points or a way to go back if you made a mistake. I found that if you have to prompt it to do an undo, sometimes it'll really mess up the code. What's nice with Easy Site is it treats like a version that it stores. Even after the session's over, you can come back a week or later and say I did change that font. Seminar. So I said, and I didn't like the result. Or after a week, we decided it wasn't, it needed to change again, or it accidentally removed something I didn't want removed. You can always revert, which is very, very nice. All right, let's check again. That no. Hmm. All right. So what I've found is sometimes Lovable is a little flaky this way. Sometimes I have to refresh the page. I'll give it, like another count to 10. There you go. Wait, see, thing is, it's choking the page. It's probably running too much JavaScript. So I'm going to go ahead and say wait, but I don't know if that'll work. But if I need to, I'll cut this part out. um, all right, I'll close some of these pages. Hmm. Okay. All right. So, all right. It looks like it did update it. It definitely brightened it up. I think I like this much better. Um, you can also ask for a light mode and a dark mode. I cannot imagine, a site like this, I would want to have a dark mode. But I like these colors. They're right. I wouldn't say it's overly stylized. Um, it looks like it did a transparency on the nav bar, which is nice. I don't know if this banner, it's like sort of backwards. My eyes are drawn to the word awaits. You see that? And I don't know if that's the word if I was building a site like this. I do like the guardians, drawing your eyes to guardians. That's reinforcing what we're looking for here. With the awaits, I'm not so sure. Yeah, I think it looks better in a light mode, a little plain. And sometimes you just don't know like what it's going to come up with. Let's see if we've. Oh, yeah, it's still not. I'm gonna refresh. Oh wow. Okay. Wow. I gotta say, Lovable nailed it. Wow. Just my first impression. The little elements I asked for. Drive-in theater, 1950s cinema. It did a really good job. It looks maybe a little bit Disney, maybe not. I like the nav bar. It's nice, nice. Um, wow. Oh, wow, wow. The one thing I would say though, that's probably needs to improve with the banner is like other than the word cinema kids, I can't quickly look and see what this service is about, and that's a problem. We would definitely have to change that hero. You need to be able to look quickly and know, right off the bat. Even this one, change colors. Your day has back, and movie adventure awaits is better than that. Yeah. Um, yeah. But I don't think it's not I look. It's not horribly worse than the other ones. I like the colors. They're bright and they're vibrant. They look very like kid. Um, these are all about that. That's your background check staff, CPR certified, real time tracking, fully insured, licensed operation. They don't have as much details, but they hit the high notes. Certified and recognized. Nice having a little like safety. If you could have an official one, it'd even be better. Emergency protocols get started today. Form is a bit much. I don't know if I would put that on the landing page. I would probably have it as a pop-up or something, but that's okay. It's easy to change in the footer. So overall, I think Lovable, good job. I can't complain. As especially as a starting point, that's fantastic. Let me see. So these navigation elements work. It's nice. So there we go. So there's our demo. Again, we're going to have future sessions, and I'm working on putting together tools that, as a group, I can give you access to before the sessions, so that you have something to test with. You can use the free accounts. Almost all of these services offer free accounts, but we're going to want to be able to all be, I think, on the same tool, so that we can give feedback a little easier than this. So I'll be setting up sessions for that in the future, so that we all can, really learn at the same time. So all right, that was the demo. I hope you've learned a little bit today about the language of what goes on a website, the intent of what you want to get in a website, and how you ask a large language model or an AI builder for it, and what the page elements are, and what the page layouts that are standard, those wireframes that I showed you, and those powerful words that we talked about. I'm going to try to build like quick reference guides that you can use, and I'm working on, so this is the form that we use now. I'm working on a more advanced context builder one, that will even be more powerful than that. That'll be a good starting point. Once you've seen a lot of prompts, once you've made a lot of prompts, you learn to tune it. I'll do a special session just on prompting at some point. Some of the tips and tricks that can really help you generate powerful ones. This is a community. We just spin it up. This was our first session, and the following week we've got another session. I'm going to try to do at least one session a week, so that we keep the tempo up and people can learn fast enough. I'm going to try to provide everybody, with places to share information and learn together, and to put learning resources, and to put tools and guides that we build as we're all learning and we move along. And it's really exciting stuff. It's the closest thing, I think, to to being a wizard. It's almost magical, and it's just going to get better over time. And think about it; it's only been a couple of years that kind of stuff has been mainstream. And in a future session, we'll go over some of this other stuff. Once you've had a chance to play it around, we'll share our experiences, share our resources, and then next steps are going to be future sessions. We've got a Supabase meeting next week, that I'll be presenting on. That'll be a hybrid one. There'll be some folks live in downtown Alexandria, and then some folks online. I'm probably going to pre-record part of it, just in case, because I never know on the inside a restaurant how good the internet's going to be. And I'm going to probably have an assistant to help me in case we have any issues with that. But thank you for attending. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe if you're on the YouTube channel watching this. I suppose the place you can watch it. I also will be posting this content in a related Facebook group, and so Facebook and YouTube for now, just to have the content out there and get to reach and bring more people into this learning circle. I think we're all going to be learning some really cool stuff. I'm excited. I hope you're excited. So have a great day. Thanks for coming.